occasionally I'd pick up, like, and then since I always had, like, a real burning interest in science, and I still do, the ski bum thing might only last for a few years, and then I'll say, hey, I know what I want to do, and then go into, you know, go back to college.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I'd pick up, like, my grandmother was a nurse in World War II. And so she had a bunch of, you know, nursing texts lying around. Well, I mean, dated, but still, I'd start reading through those, and I'd read, you know, look through things in the dictionary, read, like, an encyclopedia of science, you know, old popular mechanics sort of things. So read, you know, real more things that you'd think of somebody, you know, out of high school reading, some more hardcore sort of scientific reading. Black
Ops, the propaganda and stuff, it seems like it has an almost direct connection to, say, your interest in a writer like Michael Crichton, I guess. You know,
yeah, and also the rhetoric of it, you know, you know, you can probably tie that in with, like, Orwell and stuff. Mm-hmm. And
he's someone you read?
Yeah, 1984 scares the crap out of me. See, you know, the rhetoric of that, and, you know, how, you know, geopolitics functions in the real world. You can see, because now it's power blocks in EVE, mm-hmm. and that's evolved since the beginning of the game, and you can see, you know, some of the rhetoric that people use, the spying, the doublespeak, the sort of mix of sort of bluffing and whatnot in strategy. You can see a direct correlation of that in, like, sort of real life.
Yeah, I would say that I'm interested in something that's more than just running through a couple of levels here or there. I want something that is somewhat kind of a exploring game, something that keeps you guessing every turn, and that's how it's led into what I do now. My reading experience comes in to effect in school experience from the mythical side of it, with the names that I choose for my characters and the way that I word the talking that goes on throughout the game.
And in fact, I'm not actually that interested in what I'm reading, just the fact that I am reading. So I like to pick up big books and see how fast I can get through them. Romance novels and fantastic fiction, fantasy fiction. Instructions give me to, like, and actually, I don't want to read instructions either. I'd rather just kind of jump in and figure it out on my own. That's really strange.
So is it so that you're less attracted to the theme of a game than you are the mechanics of the game?
Right.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is probably why I'm a little more bored with games, and I'm, like, always looking for, like, the newest games to kind of play, because I've seen a lot. You know, a lot of times, you know, I mean, there's 20,000 hidden object games, and there's, you know, 50,000 time management games, and it's like, you know, they're all the same. So I'm looking for the new thing, a new way to challenge my mind.
Okay.
And Dr. Seuss books. But once I finally got my hands on an actual honest-to-goodness school library in about kindergarten and first grade, I read all nonfiction. And that's a trend that pretty much continued unabated until middle school.
Okay.
I read books on constellations and memorized where they were. I read everything on dinosaurs that was ever written by anybody ever. I read books on astronomy. Like, I can say that I was reading Isaac Asimov when I was in third grade, but I didn't read Asimov's fiction. I read a book he wrote about, like, the Viking probes on Mars.
So this connection between your science and technology interests and your reading interests seem to almost kind of grow up together.
They really did. So, I mean, it was... And part of me wants to, like, hedge that and say that it's lesser reading because it's not the imaginative fictional reading. For fiction, I watched movies and TV. Something about WoW was also that the social element of the game is so prevalent, with the way that there are sort of discourse communities within the game. The game has its own language, and if you don't know the spoken language of the game, you're not going to get very far. Much less if you don't understand the language of the game in terms of the play language. Like, playing a certain class obligates you to perform and behave in certain ways, and if you don't perform that way, everyone else will yell at you and call you names and kick you out of the party, and you won't get the sword of a thousand truths. You won't get that. Not to mention with the social aspect, forming guilds and groups and socializing within them, and how there's an in-game economy that works the way that economies work. They work by this weird supply and demand principle that very much holds up. And I think when you take all that stuff and put it together, it almost gives you an excuse to not talk about the game World of Warcraft. You talk about World of Warcraft, the social phenomenon, or World of Warcraft, the cultural phenomenon, but it's like you almost have to talk about World of Warcraft like it's something else, because if you just talk about it as a game, what most people end up talking about is stuff that's extrinsic to the game itself. It's what happens around the game, but it's not necessarily what the game is.
Sure, it makes me think of the game.
I had to ask the question again because I went on like a tangent for a second.
The thing that draws you to World of Warcraft.
Okay, what draws me to World of Warcraft? Okay. At first, it was just it's this expansive universe, in this in a box, pretty much. There's so many levels to it that brings me in, that keeps me there. One aspect is the story in and of itself. I dig lore. Like when I study a game or a comic book or any kind of or a book, I like if the author or the creator can have a really in-depth background of the world that you create. And like if you go, and I've done enough searching, like just for my own leisure, looking up stuff, like World of Warcraft has such deep roots in like so many aspects, and like you can look at different races and like they have a certain history that dates back to this, and like these two groups like clashed here, and I just find it very amazing, how much thought was put into it.
Sure.